Welcome to JMC Auto, and as you can see we have moved locations, and that is why I haven't released a video in some time now. We've been busy moving house. We've sold up our lovely 4-bed new build and moved to a 1970s bungalow. But what that has allowed us to do, especially for JMC Auto, is basically convert 2 stables, or at least one of them, into a workshop. And that's an ongoing project. It's going to take us probably half a year or so to get there because we're focusing on the house. But that's not going to stop us. Bevinsee, a company actually that reached out to me on Instagram that specialise in bolt-on modifications for a lot of brands of cars, but specifically we're going to be doing it on the Golf R today, sent me a couple of parts to get bolted on to the Golf R. One is a rear strut brace, the other's an air scoop, and the other one is actually a centre diff mounting correction plate. We'll install and potentially go and take it out on our new field. So the first modification we're going to be looking at is the strut brace, and I'll actually explain a little bit how this works afterwards, but for now let's get it installed. It's a fairly easy one, and let's make sure it fits and we're all good to go. Now if I talk through some of the components, you get 2 brackets, all machined out of aluminium. You get a strut brace and a mounting kit with some new bolts. So it's essentially unbolting the rear tie-down points and then using those mounting holes to fit it so it's not intrusive on the body, it's not intrusive on the car, and it can be put back to as it was. But let's give it a go. So the first thing you'll need to do is you'll need to locate the tie-down points. There's one here and one on the other side. You need a flathead. I've just nicked the one out the boot because it's nice and easy to get hold of. Pull down your tie-down point, and then lever, there's a little tab, lever the plastic cover out the way, and you can see that then exposes a bolt. Now you will need a special tool for this. It is not the one I've got, which is an M10, I believe it's an M8. So we'll try again. So they're like a multi-spline socket, not your normal Torx, they've got more splines. And in this case, this is an M8. They're not expensive, you can get them from most automotive or hardware shops, but they are usually automotive specific. So we'll just unbolt these, fairly easy. Now you want to remove the plastic and the bracket itself, and you can keep this. It has a little retaining nut to stop the bolt being lost, and that can be kept for if you ever return the car back to standard. And we'll just do the other side at the same time. And what I normally do with parts like this, unless you're trying to weight save, is stick them in the boot because then you'll never lose them. They're always there. Now the good thing about these mounting brackets is they actually have an L and an R. Now obviously the R goes on the right hand side of the car and the L goes on the left hand side of the car. And they mount in the same orientation, and they have these very small tabs that lock into place, like so. And then in your mounting kit, you will have number of bolts, and one of them is the correct bolt for mounting this hardware. So these take a 6mm Allen key, and like I said, the tabs line up, and then you can do up your new bolt. This Allen key, and in many cases any Allen key, unless you've got a long socket version of an Allen wrench, I tend to use the long side and get a bolt that fits perfectly. So it's a 6mm headed Allen bolt, and then use that as the support to tighten it up. And again, we'll do the other side in exactly the same way. So the next step is we need to put the rose joint inside the end of the strut bar. So they just wind in, and the reason they use adjustable is because it allows us to slide in, bolt the bolts through with the bar in the center, and then once everything's tight, we can then wind the rose joints out. This one's reverse thread, and then as you can see, there are spanner markings on the strut bar, and that's where we then tighten the strut bar up, and it pushes pressure on the struts and forces some rigidity into the body. So these don't need to be wound in fully, but probably about 3/4 of the way. You're then going to get your fitting bolts. You're going to put a washer on the outside and a washer on the side of the nut, and these will bolt directly into here, like so. I personally will have the nut on the back because I think it looks cleaner from when you open the boot side. and leave them loose for now, and the same on the other side. Now this is the slightly fiddly bit, because we bolted one side in, we now need to get this side to line up, at least initially, so we can get the bolts passed through. So make sure you've got your bolt and your washer ready, and as you can see, this won't go through. So what you need to do is you need to wind the strut bar until the bolt goes through, whether that's loosening or tightening, and then put your nut on the back. Now at this point, I recommend tightening up the strut bar without these bolts tight. That will allow a little bit of flexibility while this settles as you're tightening it, and then you can tighten the bolts up. So we'll do that now. We'll get some spanners and we'll tighten this strut bar right up and then bolt on these. So if you put your seats down, it'll give you a little bit more space. I know the car's filthy, it's not mine, but what you need now is a 21mm spanner, and then you're going to just wind this tight, and you hear the body creak ever so slightly. That's a good thing, because you want this to be very, very tight. And at a point you feel like, without forcing it, it's not going to go any further, you want to wind your nuts in, which are a 19. And once you tighten your nuts, and that is a solid strut bar, all you need to do now is tighten up the sort of bolt the strut bar to the mount. So the next bolt on that actually requires a little bit more modification than a bolt on is these air intake scoops. Now they are designed so that you essentially cut an area off your grill and put the scoop underneath, and it bolts together, and it allows a little bit more airflow to come through and into your engine, cooling your engine, or in this case cooling or putting more cooling air into the intake. So what you have to do is you have to remove the grill itself, because it's a lot easier to cut it when it's off the car. Pop the screw somewhere safe. You have to lift up and pop each side out like so. I've already done it, but you can see there's like a gripper there, or a tag there that you need to pop out. And then what that will allow you to do is give you the space to mark up and cut out the areas that your additional intakes will go. So these will sit somewhere along here. You'll cut that out, draw a mark up, cut it out, and then bolt the new system to it. So once you've got your grill off, there are two parts to this modification. One is the scoop and one is the vent, or whatever you want to call it. So this bolts through and into the vent, and then this pulls additional air through the top where the bonnet scoop is and forces it across the radiator or across the intake. So essentially what we've got to do is we've got to find a location that this scoop can sit in nicely, and I suspect it will be somewhere around here, and then ultimately where the bonnet vent or the top vent will sit. So we'll get an idea of where that will be. I suspect somewhere like that, so that's flush and that's pushing air across. We can then drill some holes. Now I have pretty much I don't know where any of my tools are. And then what we're going to do is drop the grill, and then I'm going to use a drill bit just to drill straight through, mark the locations. Yes, I know I'm using an angled drill to do this, and it's a bit stupid, but it's all I can find at the moment with the move. Okay, the reason we drill the holes there is because it will allow us to work out where this additional vent's going to sit, and then we can drop the bolts in. So the kit comes with some bolts. We just need 2 of them for now, because it's just going to hold it in location while we mark up. This will hold in place. So what I'm going to do with a Stanley blade, I'm just going to mark out some of the lines along here and here to get essentially where we're going to cut the hole, because we don't want to cut the hole all the way out here. It won't actually be beneficial, and I'm aware I've misdrilled, so I will re-drill them. That shouldn't be a problem. So you could use anything now, but a multi-tool is going to be, in this case, probably the easiest way of doing it. You want to remove the bolts and remove the grill. You'll see we now have essentially a dot-to-dot line to play dot to dot with, and that will allow us to sort of cut out the exact shape that we need. So what we'll do, we'll get the multi-tool. Use a Stanley just to cut away some of the melted plastic from the multi-tool. There we go, and we have our hole. So now, again, I might have to re-drill the holes, but we'll just check now. We can essentially put this vent on the bottom side, and then, or the scoop on the bottom side, and then the vent on the top side. Line up the holes. We are just slightly off, so what we'll do is we'll bolt the 3 in that we can do. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sandwich these together and then re-drill the holes so we know the other ones are going to be in exactly the right location. I'll just re-drill the holes. And we'll just put the other 2 bolts in, tighten them up nicely. And there we have it. The first one is done. As you can see, we put that in place. It just misses the top of the rad, but that's going to just allow a little bit more airflow down into here. The second one is a little bit tricky because we've got to measure this distance here and make sure that it's central. Should be fairly easy because the hole on this side is in a similar situation, so we know it's just below. And the same up here, draw us almost a straight line across. So that should be relatively easy. But if we measure this distance here and put the edge of this at the right distance, that will be perfect. So I've just marked, from, in my case, 30 mil across. And instead of using the scoop now to measure the correct distance, I'm now going to use the vent. So we know that line will line up here. And then we can get a rough idea of the distance looking at the holes that already exist, and we know it's going to be somewhere around there. I think looks about right. Got a drill again. We're just going to mark the holes this time. There we go. Then Daddy gets a knife, cuts around the edge, okay, and then anything on the bottom can get scraped off. And then what do we need next, darling? Good girl. So that goes on there. Right, can I have the other bolt? Good girl. And then we need the big scoop. This is the scoop. I need you to put a bolt in there. Good girl. Daddy put a nut on the back. Daddy needs a bolt in the other one. In here. Have you got the other nut? So as you can see, we now have the grill with the additional venting and scoops mounted. So what we'll do is we'll bolt that back onto the car now. So it's a case of finding all the grooves, clicking it in, and then putting the 2 bolts back in. And then we have the additional airflow that we never had before, so it's hopefully going to add a little bit more additional cooling over into the engine bay and ultimately over the radiators. So the final thing we got from Bevinsee with a bolt-on mod is these Propshaft alignment tabs. I don't know what you'd call them, but they're basically, underneath you've got a centre Propshaft bearing and they're bolted through, but the holes themselves have got really large holes, so there's a lot of wiggle room to make it, I guess, easier to fit in the factory. But what that means is your Propshaft could be slightly misaligned and cause vibrations through the cabin. And with the power that the Golf R's produced, that could be a problem. So it's a relatively inexpensive kit. And these essentially bolt on top of where the original bolts go through, which I'll show you in a second. It's a case of jacking the car up, making sure it's safe, 13mm socket. And essentially, we take these bolts out and then these caps bolt on top and make the holes effectively smaller and align the centre of the holes with the outside of the frame. I think the easiest thing is to just show you it's a relatively easy modification and should reduce any sort of internal vibrations and potentially damage the prop shaft. So I don't know if you can see in here the length and the width of this hole. What we need to do ideally is unbolt both, so there's a little bit of flexibility as we're bolting the new caps on. Pull one of the caps out. You see they've got sort of aligned centre holes, and that drops over the top of here and it forces those holes to be directly in the centre. And when you bolt this back up, it ensures that there's a lot less wiggle room in the prop shaft. Again, not great for production line fitment, but ideal for high power applications. Okay, so I'll leave them loose and we'll take the other side off. Okay, and then effectively we can go back and we can bolt these up, re-torque them. So that's everything for this video. Thanks for being patient, and I appreciate I haven't been uploading a huge amount, and that's mainly down to the house. If people are interested in seeing house content, let me know and I'm more than happy to video that and put that up. My brother-in-law is going to be extremely happy with the car now. He's got a stiffer rear end, he's got more air going into the radiator to help with cooling, and he's also got less vibration through the cabin through the prop shaft alignment. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video and it's given you a bit of insight into some of the bolt-ons that Bevinsee do. Check out their website and make sure you have a look down below for the discount code that will unlock a little bit of money off for you if you order through the code and from Bevinsee. Thanks again.